It would be very difficult for us to talk about prevalence because we have some figures that we work with, which we derive from the figures that are reported to us in our data management systems. But sometimes they fluctuate a lot. Sometimes we report about as low as 4,000 bites in a year. Sometimes we report as high as 35,000 bites in a year across the country. But one of the things that I can tell you is that whatever figure we report is very low because a lot of the bites are not reported. So as a program, we don't even use those figures that we receive. Instead, we have tried to come up with our own estimations. So if you ask me, for purposes of planning, how many bites do you think we have in a year? Then I would tell you we have at least 50,000 bites in a year. So that is just for purposes of planning. Yeah. Climate change, first of all, climate change is brought about by environmental degradation. So these are things that like deforestation and so on. These are activities that interfere with the habitats of, the snakes. So it definitely has an impact because at first, as you're interfering with their habitat, they will now come into the, human habitats, and then there will be that conflict between the snakes and the humans. So to an extent, we are seeing a lot of, a causal relationship between snake bites and environmental degradation as well. The whole thing about antivenoms is, first of all, you have to understand how they are developed. So what happens is that we get venom from the snake, and then we inject an animal with that venom, a little of it. So what that animal, usually a horse, we use horses quite a bit. So what happens is that the animal develops antibodies. That's what every organism does. Every animal produces antibodies, to try and neutralize the venom. So these antibodies, we now harvest them and then we package them so that we use them. When somebody is bitten, we use them to neutralize very fast before the venom now destroys the tissues and vital organs in the body. So we use that antivenom, which is antibodies from, say, a horse or any other animal that we have used. Now, this shows you the venom is very specific to a snake. So this tells you if you're bitten by a puff adder, you can only use antivenom which was developed from a puff adder. You cannot use antivenom that was developed from a black mamba. So when you look at the antivenoms that we have, many of them have different kinds of species, venoms of different kinds of species were used, and then they are combined. So you find one antivenom it has been produced from almost 10 or 20 species of snakes. So that if any kind of snake bites you, you don't really have to look for it and see what kind of snake it is. Because even if I asked you what kind of snake, if I showed you a snake and told you what is it, you might not know. So we try to cover that by coming up with what we call polyvalent, a polyvalent kind of antivenoms with very many kinds of venoms inside, as opposed to monovalent, which just has one venom. Now, the other thing is, which you really need to know, is that even if you're bitten by a black mamba, geographical variation also is important. A black mamba, an Indian black mamba, might not have exactly the same type of venom as a Kenyan black mamba. So if you get your venom from an Indian black mamba, and then you come to treat a Kenyan bite from a black mamba, it might not work, If you if you harvest your venom in India and you manufacture antivenom in India, it might not be useful to Kenyan market. So unless you come and harvest your venom from Kenya, from the Kenyan snakes, Then you carry it and go and manufacture, because we don't have a manufacturing capacity here in Kenya. You go and manufacture in India, then now you will have effective anti-venom. And that is one of the difficulties that we are facing today in Kenya, because the venoms that we have come from outside. And so as a country, we are now looking at, we are really seriously thinking about manufacturing our own anti-venom here in Kenya, so that we can be able to milk our own snakes, and then we manufacture so that we are sure that the anti-venom that we are using is effective for the bites that are happening here in Kenya. Okay. Snake bites were included in the list of neglected tropical diseases in 2018, you know. So before that, we just used to hear about snake bites on television. Personally, I didn't really bother about them. But when they were included in the list of neglected tropical diseases, at that time I was the head of the National Neglected Tropical Diseases Program. So we were now confronted with a new problem, because every week you would see on television a boy has been bitten by a black mamba, they've died, you know. A girl was looking for firewood, and then they were bitten by a puff adder, and they have lost their limb, you know. There were those very horrid stories about, you know, snake bites. But now, when it became a neglected tropical disease, the World Health Organization categorized it as a neglected tropical disease. So we had to look for solutions. The first thing we discovered was that there was only one antivenom that was available in the public hospitals, because our public hospitals draw medicines from KEMSA, Kenya Medical Supplies Authority. So there was only one antivenom that was registered and pre-qualified by KEMSA. So we did not have any variety. So our first agenda, when we were given this condition, was to now increase the number of antivenoms that are registered. And today we have 4 registered in the country. Our target was to register 5. So we only have 1 to go before we can be able to meet our target. And then we are now working towards ensuring that all the registered antivenoms are pre-qualified, so that they are available in KEMSA and they can be distributed countrywide in the public hospitals. Because for as long as they are not within the KEMSA system, then access becomes a problem. So you'll find that, yes, we have registered them, but they are not available in a place like Migori or Lunga or Mandera, you know, in the farthest places in the country, because these are places where people depend on these, you know, they depend on the public health system. And this is a matter of health security. So far we have 2 antivenoms which have been approved by KEMSA. So we are working on pre-qualification, actually it's called pre-qualification, of the other 2. Even as we try to ensure that we have an additional antivenom registered in the country, we want all the 4 that are registered to be pre-qualified by KEMSA, so that they are available within the public health system. Yeah. We are making a lot of headway. Of course, these are things that take very long, but you know, as a country, we really want, because it's something that even the head of state, the president, has instructed that we move very fast, because you know, this is an issue of, I was telling you that you know, this is a matter of health security. When we start losing our people because of snake bites, then it becomes a very bad thing. We don't want to lose anybody, you know, because that person who dies of a snake bite, it might just be one person, you know, a very small percentage in the whole population. But to that person, that's 100%. And I was telling you that we estimate that we have about 50,000 bites. Out of those 50,000 bites, we estimate that about 800 people die every year in Kenya because of snake bites. And these are preventable deaths. If we have effective antivenoms and they are available in the public health system, so that when somebody is bitten, they can be able to access them very fast, we can prevent these deaths, because this is a very significant number. So we have started working on manufacture, and we are working in collaboration with very many stakeholders, government agencies, private practitioners, technical experts within the country, and even other agencies outside of the country. So we have gotten into discussions with the government of the Republic of Costa Rica, because they are way ahead in terms of technology. They produce their own antivenoms. In fact, one of the antivenoms the last one that we registered, it is called Equitab Plus. It is manufactured in Costa Rica. So we want to be able to transfer the technical skills so that we can train our own scientists, we can build our own capacity, and then we can be able to produce our own antivenom here. So we've started by rearing snakes. We are working with the Institute of Primate Research in Karen. We have actually come up with they have constructed a herpetarium. That is where the snakes are kept. We are actually working very closely with the IPR, the Institute of Primate Research, so that now they are, we are starting to prepare ourselves. The first thing that we need to do, we discovered, is that we need to have the snakes. Yeah. So when you go to IPR, they've started. Actually, now we are doing extremely well, because we are almost having all the kinds of snakes that you can find in Kenya. So we are rearing them there. We are able to even extract the venom from the snakes already, and we have done very well on that front. So the next thing is we want to be able to rear the animals that we can be able to use to produce the antivenom, the antibodies now. Now, we cannot just use any kind of animal, We have to use certain types of animals, and they also have to be reared so that they are pathogen-free. Because sometimes we can use animals which will, even snakes, which will now give us, the antivenom itself is not even safe because of the kind of contamination. So we have to rear these animals in a certain specific, very highly regulated environment. The snakes have to be reared in a very highly regulated environment, so that at the end of the day, the product that we get is a very high quality antivenom that just treats and does not pose any danger to the person. So we are already rearing snakes. We are looking at working on the animals. We are working on a memorandum of understanding with the government of Costa Rica. We are looking at the World Health Organization is very interested in supporting technically, so that we can be able to build our capacity. Because once we establish this manufacturing plant here in Kenya, we are going to actually be the only manufacturing country of that sort in the region. So we are going to actually supply, because we are depending on the whole of Africa. We are depending on antivenoms from India, from South America. So this time we will be able to have one which is very specific to African snakes, and we are looking at supplying the whole region with antivenom. Yeah. Some people will lose them. These 800 I was telling you is not because of anything else. It's just because of how they now handle themselves after they have been bitten. When you are bitten by a snake, you should not run for help. Because when you run for help, you assist the venom to circulate. When you run, the blood circulates faster. So you assist the venom to circulate and go into your brain and other tissues and other organs, which after it has gotten there, now it is very difficult for you to respond to treatment. So what we usually say is, when you are bitten by a snake, you calm down, you call for help, so that you are carried to the hospital. You are immobilized. Or even if you have to walk, you walk very small, short distances. Another thing that you're not supposed to do, some people usually say that when you are bitten by a snake, say on the hand, you tie the hand so that the blood, the venom doesn't circulate. That is a very bad thing. Because if you succeed in making the blood not to circulate, then you're going to kill the whole hand. That part of the body depends on the blood to get oxygen, to get food. Yeah, so actually most of the amputations we do, you'll find it is because the people themselves, they have actually killed their hand or their leg, because of tying very tightly. It is not a good thing. That is a very archaic thing. You're not supposed to do that. First of all, our mouths are very dirty. When you try to suck something, you even make it even sick. But worse still, you might even be having some wounds. Sometimes you might have wounds in the mouth. So if you suck the venom, you might make it to move to the brain much faster. So we are not supposed to do that. We don't suck. The other thing is you don't bite off. I've seen quite a number of people coming to hospital. They have tried to bite off the area where the snake bit them. So those are not things that we are supposed to do. But then the other question is, what should you do, when you're bitten? Yeah. So number one, you need to wash the area. First of all, you calm down. I know it's a very scary thing because people associate snake bites with death. Where I come from, we believe that I can send a snake to come and bite you, which is a very weird kind of belief. But one of the first things you should do is to wash the place. Even as first aid, you wash the place with copious amounts of water so that you clean it up. If there are any other pathogens, they die off. Yeah? And then the other thing is that we need to go to the hospital so that we get anti-venom. We have worked so hard as a government to ensure that now we have anti-venom as near to everybody as possible. In 2018, we did a survey and we found that whole districts, several clusters of districts, they didn't have anti-venom. So if somebody is bitten, they will die trying to look for anti-venom. Right now, we have made the venom available. At least in every sub-county, you'll find hospitals which have anti-venom, effective anti-venom. So we need to go to the hospital so that we get anti-venom. There are some people in the villages who claim that they can treat snake bites. Those are the biggest enemies of this problem, because they have some stones, some black stones, which they say they put on the place where this snake has bitten, and then the stone sucks out the venom. These are very bad people, because one of the most precious things that a snake has is that venom. That is what it uses to get food. It is not for biting people or for fighting or no. It is for food. If it misuses that venom, it will sleep hungry. So what happens is that when a snake sees you, it will run away. Snakes can never attack you to come and bite you. Yeah? Snakes, most of the bites that we receive are because somebody mistakenly stepped on a snake, and then as a reflex action, it bit them. A snake has to prepare itself before it goes to hunt. It has to bring out the venom so that it can be able to deliver a venomous bite. If it just bites you, by reflex, that bite does not have venom. It is what we call a dry bite. A big chunk of the snakes don't even have, they are not poisonous. They don't have venom. And even the ones that have venom, a big 90% of the bites are dry bites because it just bites by reflex. Now, this is what happens. When somebody is bitten by a snake by reflex, they get a dry bite, they start shouting, and then people come and say, oh, a snake has bitten. So they start looking for the snake, they corner it. Then the snake discovers that it's in danger. So it realizes, I can also use this venom of mine to defend myself. So these people who are trying to kill the snake, it will bite maybe one or two of them. And the saddest part is that over 90% of the people who die of snake bites, the ones who come to hospital now with the actual envenomation and they die because of snake bites, are the ones who are trying to kill the snake after it bit somebody else. When you now ask later, you are told, it bit a small boy, after the people have died. 2 people have died maybe from one family. So you are trying to find out what happened. They say, it bit a boy. So these ones came to kill it, it beat them again. So you ask, and what happened to the boy? They say, no, the boy is okay. The boy, funnily enough, the boy is fine. It is because the boy got a dry bite. So what happens is this. People get dry bites, they go to those village doctors with their black stones. These are actually not doctors, they are murderers. So they go to them and then they put that black stone. There is no venom inside. And then after some time they tell them, oh, now it has sucked the venom, now you can go home. So because a lot of the people have dry bites, they go to the village person and they come back well. Now, the few who get venomous bites will go to the village person. The village person will put those stones and do their drama. Nothing happens. Then they start deteriorating. Then the village person realizes, wow, here there is a problem. So he says, now try to go to the hospital. When they get to the hospital, they have stayed for too long. The venom has already circulated throughout the body. It has gotten into the brain. So even if you give them anti-venom, it doesn't help. So these ones end up dying. So what does the community see? They see that those people who go to the village person, they come back well. The ones who go to the hospital come back dead. And yet, if they would have gone straight to the hospital after the bite, then they would have been given anti-venom and they would be well. Luckily, we have conducted quite a lot of community awareness, especially in the hotspots, in the areas where we have the biggest number of snake bites. Those are places like Kilifi, Baringo, Kitui, and some parts of northern Kenya. We have been able to go there with the data that we received and sensitize the communities, and we've seen a big change. When people are bitten, they go to hospital. They find anti-venom there, effective anti-venom. They find people whom we have trained in the health facilities. Because in 2018, nurses, clinical officers, doctors, they were scared of treating snake bites, because whenever they would treat, sometimes people, they can react to the antivenom. They didn't know how to handle the reaction. Some of them even die because of anaphylaxis, reaction between proteins. Sometimes you can eat a protein and you see a rash. It's something that happens. So for the snake bite, sometimes when you give antivenom, there is that reaction. So it needs to be managed. But because some people would give and then somebody reacts very badly, and even some of them die, it's something that we expect. But it can be managed. So they got scared because they say this person maybe might have survived. But because I gave the medicine, they died. So when we went there, they said, no, I cannot give antivenom. I'd rather send this patient to where there is a doctor so that the patient can be treated. So we trained them. They are now confident. They have safe antivenom, effective. When the people go there, they are treated. So now, at least the communities have changed, and we have seen a big, drastic reduction. First of all, I must say that as a program, we have really worked hard to address the issues that we found on the ground. Yeah. In 2018, there were so many stakeholders who were working, in an uncoordinated manner. So people would go bring antivenoms that don't even work in Kenya. And then they start selling them here because there was no coordination, there was no regulation. There was regulation, but it was not being observed keenly. When we started, we conducted a survey, and we discovered, just in one town only, we discovered 16 types of antivenoms that are either not supposed to be in Kenya. And in some instances, we actually found that people had taken a painkiller, an injection called diclofenac, and then they have put a label on it, dawa ya nyoka. So people are injecting themselves with a painkiller, thinking that it's an antivenom, and yet it's a painkiller. So we actually discovered there was a lot of uncoordination. So the quick thing we did was to organize all these stakeholders. We came up with a stakeholder forum. We called them together, we organized them into one proper coordinated community, because some of them are very passionate about snake bites. So we organized them. There were some who were rogue. They were smuggling antivenoms into the country, antivenoms which are not even registered. So we also negotiated with them. We told them, no, stop doing this. And some of the antivenoms were actually effective, but they were being smuggled into the country. So we said we cannot allow you to smuggle medicines into the country. This is a country which is regulated. So we discussed, we negotiated, and at last we started seeing a very well-regulated snakebite environment. So we are happy. We know that some of them probably are still smuggling some of the antivenoms, but we are watching. Now we are very keen. And if we find any one of them, we will arrest so that we can avoid this situation where people just come and give antivenoms. One of the antivenoms we got when we carried out the survey was for a sea snake in Australia. It's not even here. It's not even a land snake. It's a sea snake which bites people when they are swimming. So such antivenoms cannot really work. The other thing we did is we discovered that the health workers were scared of managing snake bites. They didn't know how to do it. They were scared that if they manage the snake bites, maybe people will die. So we came up with a guideline, a national guideline for snakebite, management of snake bites. And this guideline, I have even a copy here. This guideline, actually we did it in record time. It is those stakeholders that I'm telling you who we organized into a stakeholders forum that prepared this guideline. So we did it very fast. Kenya was the first country to prepare this guideline. Immediately the snake bites were added to NTDs, neglected tropical diseases. And from a recent survey that was conducted, it was actually, the assessment revealed that Kenya has the best organized anti-snake bite program in Africa, because we started immediately. So we came up with this guideline, which we used to train people so that now they are able to manage snake bites better. Number 3, we increased the number of products, effective products on the market. From 1, now we have 4. So people have a choice. Number 4, we negotiated with the manufacturers and the suppliers. These antivenoms now, they are supplied in KEMSA for less than 5,000 shillings. Before that, 1 vial of antivenom was going at between 16,000 and 30,000 shillings. It was unaffordable. So when a small, young, poor girl is bitten looking for firewood, they die because they cannot afford the treatment. But today, the counties can access antivenom at 5,000 shillings a vial or less. Actually, some are 3,600. We have negotiated. Number 2, when they get to the counties, we have also encouraged them to waive the cost, especially for people who cannot afford. So everybody, there is no reason why somebody cannot afford or cannot access antivenom. Yeah, so we have actually really tried to make sure that the antivenoms are there, the people are trained. We have also been able to come up with information on which are the hottest spots. We have gone there and encouraged people to go to hospitals. And so that has collectively contributed to the drop in the numbers of the snake bites that we are hearing about. We have always compensated snakebite victims under the existing arrangement of human-wildlife conflict. But the Ministry for Tourism and Wildlife came up and observed that the compensation, snake bites were accounting for almost 100% of the claims. And it was not affordable for the ministry. And generally, the Ministry of Tourism successfully requested that snake bites be removed from that arrangement. So much as we were trying to solve, as a government, we were trying to solve one problem, we also created another problem, which now we are working to see how we can be able to address. So we are using a whole of government approach. It is not just a problem of wildlife. It is not just a problem of health. It is not just a problem of any other government institution. It is a problem of all arms of government. So by trying to play our part to ensure that we reduce on the number of snake bites, to ensure that we have all the facilities that we need and available and affordable, then we can be able to see once the burden has reduced, even if it does not mean compensating, how do we go about it so that people who are bitten by snakes do not just suffer 100% of that kind of conflict? We are taking this issue of snake bites very seriously because it is a problem that much as we have already covered quite a distance, the one we have covered now is the shorter one. There is still a longer distance to go. So we, as a country, we are taking the snake bites very seriously. We want to be able to live like people in the first world, the way they live. They even keep snakes as pets, and sometimes it is even those people, their pets are the ones that bite them. But you find that they have a very responsive public health system. And even themselves, they know how to handle those snakes. So we want to be able to coexist with these snakes. We cannot have a situation where we are saying snakes are bad, because if we were to wish that we wake up and there is no snake, tomorrow we will start having a big problem. Because these snakes are the ones that are also preventing a lot of diseases. By eating rats and rodents, we are not having things like plague, So if we eradicated the snakes, we would be eradicating ourselves. We have to coexist with them. So our plan is to really look at the snakes as a very important resource, but at the same time, to look at snake bites as an important health security threat.